introduce you to Mr. Gil Noble. He's the host of ABCs, As You Like It, and like it is, pardon me, it slipped me. So, welcome. Let's see, right over here. Okay, sitting next to him, we have our president, and I should remember his name, Edison O. Jackson. And here's it. Dr. Carroll, Dean of Student Services. William Lineman, he's a student representative. Dr. Adediti, faculty. Carmen Martinez, and she's the evening class vice president. And last but not least, Andrea Thompson. Let me leave her out. Recording secretary. Estella Charles, junior class president. And Mr. Greg Mayers, our president for student government. Once again, let me say welcome. And we're happy and honored to have you here. We're going to begin our program. He'll speak to us students, and I'm sure what he has to say will be of some importance and very interesting to us, because for our future, we have to see what options are out there as technical changes are being made, and these will impact on us socially as well as economically. So here's Mr. Noble.
Good turnout. How's everybody tonight? That bad, huh? Let me try it one more time. How is everybody tonight? All right. All right. Is everybody here registered to vote? Is everybody going to vote? All right. That's the way I like to start things. I was talking with your president this evening about the poll that has just come out. It says that Mr. Dinkins is, his lead has been reduced substantially. It's 45 to 41 or something like that. And there are some people who are supposed to be very happy about the fact that the lead that Mr. Dinkins had is shrinking according to this poll. And as you know, I'm sure some of you have been discussing the fact that maybe the poll was done to sort of discourage people from voting. I sure hope not. I'd like to believe that the poll was done for above-board reasons and all of that. But just in case, there are some people who are depending on the poll to discourage voters. It is my hope that each and every one of you will make your presence and your political selection known by turning out to that polling place and pulling the lever for the candidate of your choice. And something tells me that I know which lever you're going to pull. Let me also say there's many faces here that I recognize tonight, and there are quite a few that I'm seeing for the first time. But I want you to know that I'm an old friend of this college, and I've been coming out here over the years, and I love this college. And I want you to know that I'm very proud of this college, and I was privileged to spend some time with your president, who's 2 months on the job. And he has some very, very inspiring things to say about the agenda. And one of the most inspiring things that he had to say was about the certainty that this college is going to be a 4-year college. And I go for that. Now, the theme is to deal with options. Academic options, vocational options, professional options in this thing that we call life, in this experience in these United States. And it's very difficult for me to talk with any great expertise about the broad spectrum of options that may exist for you, because some of you may be interested in chemistry, mathematics, physics, history, psychology, computer technology, and whatever. And obviously I don't have expertise in all of those things, but there are some things that I can talk about that is germane to each and every one of you, regardless of what your academic discipline may happen to be, and whatever your professional choice in life may happen to be. Because we are now faced with some very, very difficult times. We as a people are catching hell. The condition of our communities is a source of deep concern to me, and I'm sure that you're concerned about it too. Our young men are, as we've been saying for a long time now, an endangered species. I was looking at the report of the National Urban League, and they said that out of every 10 black men under the age of 21, only 2 are projected as having an opportunity or a chance of making enough money to support themselves and a woman and a child. That's 20%. That's serious, not only for black men, but for black women. Not only that, but we see an explosion that is taking place from within our community and between our community and other communities. Black men can be shot down at the drop of the hat, seemingly with the sanction of the system. The death rate now is catastrophic among black men. Many of our black women now are finding themselves without even any hope of hooking up with a black man. The sisters now are complaining, where are the black men? Where are our brothers? Young men are in short supply. Thank you, Dr. Shabazz. There's a deep concern about the supply. Where are our black young men? In many instances, we find that they are not good selections or good material to be a spouse and a parent. We find that they are in a position where they have not been properly educated, so they can't get a job. Many are saying with alarming clarity that the biggest supply of black men is in facilities like Rikers Island. And I've been out to Rikers Island many times, and you see these big strapping dudes. Muscles for days. Without any sense of purpose or direction as to how to flex their muscle. And so in institutions like Rikers Island, black men are killing black men. Black men are taking a fancy to black men. Black men who you wouldn't think would be inclined that way. Because they're behind bars, they get into all sorts of strange sexual gymnastics. Please don't sit there like you don't know what I'm talking about. And these black men are at war with each other. And And somehow they've gotten the mistaken idea that their manhood is tied up with their ability to inflict violence, because the environment has given such a false impression of what real manhood is all about. So they think that if you're willing to take a life, then you are a man. If you don't take no stuff from nobody, then you are a man. If you've got some long money, then you are a man, regardless of how you got it. The society has given us a strange value system. And so I have a question that I have to put in front of all of you this evening that transcends the issue of academic selection and development. Certainly you must succeed in your studies. You must do well. You must get your grades. You must graduate. You must get yourself employed. But there's a sociological situation that we have today that mandates that you do more than just go to work and go home. And if you do not address yourself to this mandate, you're going to find that you're not going to be safe to go to work or come home, as it is now. Many are not able to drive through the streets safely. You stop for a red light, and our brothers are leaning across your car with a dirty rag trying to wipe your windshield in exchange for a quarter. And as you've noticed over a period of months, their demands are becoming more adamant. Now a quarter ain't enough. Say, what you mean? This is the best you could do, Jim? Say, my name ain't Jim. Here's another quarter. The problem is that these are men who are angry. They are ill-suited to survive by so-called legitimate means, and so they have taken to all kinds of humiliating endeavors to try to make a living. And then there are others who knowingly are getting into illegitimate exercises to make a living, encroaching on all other citizens in this environment. I did an interview that ran the last couple of weeks with a young man. I don't know if any of you saw it, but it was disturbing because this young brother, 23 years old, was burnt out, bright, intelligent, but all the fire that should be in a young man is gone. He doesn't believe in anything, and he doesn't respect anything or anybody. I said, do you respect the police? He said, no. I said, do you respect black leaders? No. Do you respect white leaders? No. City Hall? No. The State House? No. The White House? No. The FBI? No. Nothing. And that seems to be depressing, but then you have to realize that maybe this young man has good reason. You look at the headlines today. An evangelist supposed to be passing on the word of God got himself a good whipping in court, didn't he? And here's this man who had amassed millions disgracefully, hobbling along to serve a 45-year jail sentence. Even his ankles were shackled. Then they got this actress, Zsa Zsa who smacked a cop. And the cop took her to court and pressed charges, and the judge gave her a good dressing down. Look at what young people have to look at and why perhaps they're burnt out and why they're so angry. They look at all kinds of judges who are admittedly having a problem putting things up their nose. There are police who are caught in all kinds of illicit adventures. There are senators and congressmen, attorneys general, all involved. Even one of the men in the White House was caught with his hand in the kitty. So when you look at what young people are exposed to today, small wonder why they are burnt out. They look around and they see life from a strange vantage point. They don't see it from the perspective of a white kid in suburbia who looks from a penthouse perspective down. They look up at this society and see the underbelly. And because many of them have been involved in dealing with all kinds of illicit trade, they see police who come and are paid off. They see judges who are bought and paid off. They see politicians who are coming uptown in their community to buy flesh, black flesh. And so they are able to take a very realistic look at America, and they don't have much respect for America. And so the question is, what are we going to do about this group of young people? Mind you, young brothers and sisters like yourselves do not reflect the majority of our youth. You are lucky. You are the exception. Most of the young people of our kith and kin are in serious trouble today. Most of them are angry. Most of them are at war with you and me and themselves. This young brother I was telling you about who has no respect for anything, he said that life is such out on the street that you can get your brains blown out just for looking at somebody. He was telling me that if somebody looks at you too hard, that's a challenge. So you say, what you looking at? And depending on what your answer is, either it's war or you're a punk. If you say nothing, you've punked out. If you say, I'm looking at you, that's war. And he called me up today and told me that his best friend got involved in an exchange like that. Guy pulled out a gun and blew his brains out. Put 3 bullets right in his best friend's brain. They had to close the casket at the funeral. And so my question to you is, what are you going to do about this? I know that you want to get yourself a good education and get that good job, and I applaud that, as I said. But how are you going to enjoy it? How are you going to enjoy the material goods that you hope to acquire? Where are you going to park that nice car you want to buy? Where are you going to leave that nice coat you want to purchase? How are you going to bolt up the doors in your crib so that you'll be safe? You see what rich people are doing now? They buy these great big diamonds and put the diamond in the vault, and they wear a glass replica. And even then, they find that their throats are getting slit. They have these great big mansions, and then they got to put a fence around the grounds. Then they got big dogs to protect the house. Then they got to hire guards to guard the dogs. Then they got to hire guards to guard the guards who are guarding the dogs. Point I'm trying to make is that if we don't take a good look at what is going on around us and find a way to address ourselves to that, then we're not going to be able to enjoy anything, because there's some people around who are so miserable that they're saying, If there's not justice for everybody, there's going to be justice for nobody. Somebody I greatly admired once said it best. He said, if you sit at a table with a steak on your plate across from somebody who doesn't have anything on their plate, don't you expect to be able to finish your meal? Because sooner or later that man is going to move on your meal, and rightly so. And so Malcolm X's analogy is right. You're not going to be able to enjoy that which you are in quest of unless you see that there is justice. But the problem is not just limited to our communities. We're looking at a national picture. This crack thing is awful. And as bad as it is, ICE is coming from the West Coast, which is worse. ICE over there, it's some new chemical that does not require cocaine. And yet it gives you a bigger blast than crack, and it lasts longer, and it's cheap. And they call it ICE, and it comes from the Orient. I don't guess I'm telling you anything you don't already know. But it's coming east very rapidly. And so all the young people who you see now who are in trouble, look out, they're going to be far worse tomorrow. But not only is the drug scene a problem, but the educational system is a problem in this country. I looked at what happened to Yusef and the march that took place out in Bensonhurst in response to his murder, and those white people who were leaning out of their windows, spitting out these obscenities to the marchers. When I cut away all of their obscene remarks, you know what they were saying about us? You people are always on the dole. You people haven't contributed anything. You people have no history. You're worthless. You're shiftless. You ain't worth nothing. Why don't you get out of here? Why don't you get out of our community? Can you imagine somebody from Europe in this country saying our community? But if the educational system were correct, maybe a lot of these things would not be said. Maybe a lot of these attitudes would not exist. Not only would white people who have racism in their bone marrow cool out, but maybe some of our young brothers and sisters would stand up and be more respectful of self and their brothers and sisters. Martin Luther King used to say, a man can't ride your back unless it's bent. And he's right. And he wasn't talking about physically, he's talking about informationally and attitudinally. And if somebody can determine what you think of yourself and make that determination negative, that person has you as a captive. Just as certainly as if they'd put metal shackles around your limbs. They have a psychological shackle around your brain that will make you his meal. And the educational system in this country is designed to aggrandize people of European descent and deprecate people of African descent. And the reason why the educational system, in my humble opinion, is so constructed is because this country has a lot of explaining to do if the truth is told. There are a lot of crimes that this country has committed, and they don't want the truth told. It's just like when a criminal goes to court, you'll never expect the criminal to admit to the crime. You know, look at Baker. You know, I didn't do it. You know, I didn't do anything wrong. And so there's been an attempt to manipulate history to make Europeanism look right and the victims of Europeanism look guilty. And so there's a lot of information that we need to see infused into the educational system, and that's why you're so lucky to be going to a college such as this, because you have black role models, you have black history at your disposal, you have a wealth of books at your disposal here, you have black faculty, and praise God you got a black president. And a good one, who loves you and is concerned about you. I'm going to tell it right in front of his face. We sat up in the office and we weren't talking about him. We were talking about you. He didn't tell me anything at all about himself, where he got his degree. He didn't tell me about his bootstrapping. He didn't tell me about all his travail. The theme song was you. So you're very, very lucky. But what I'm saying is that the national picture is a completely different story. Our young people don't know anything at all about our history. They don't know anything at all about Africa. And so they really think that Africa is a place of savages. And even many of us today who pretend to be proud of Africanism have a Eurocentric perspective nonetheless. Many of us pose as being Afrocentric, but our behavior is Eurocentric. Many of us walk and act and strut as though we are as black as we can be, but some of our behavior is completely different. And so I'm convinced that history is the answer. You must know your history. Don't care what your discipline may happen to be. You've got to have a framework in which to put it. If you don't have a framework in which to put your discipline, you will misuse your discipline and use that discipline against yourself and your own people. And so we see a lot of people nowadays with degrees as long as my arm. I mean, they got all kinds of degrees. And yet, when it comes to being loyal to their African self, you can forget it. They will fight and defend Europeanism, and they will give a brother or sister more hell than many crackers would. Now, I'm laying this out here because the hour is late, and I'm deeply concerned about what's going on. I'm tired, I'm sick and tired. I'm tired of being tired, of looking at the death and destruction and negativism in our community. I'm tired of it, and I know the only people who can stop it are men and women like yourselves. Make no mistake about it, I'm not speaking in racist terms. Because I speak so strong about blackness and I'm so critical of white racism, shouldn't be misconstrued into thinking that I am a racist or that I hate white people. That is not true. In fact, for the last decade or so, I've been insisting that some of my dearest friends are friendly with white people. I'd be the biggest hypocrite in the world to espouse that which I hate, and that is racism. But while I do not espouse racism, I am an African, and I'm proud of it, and I don't like to see African people messed with. And I don't like to see what is going on in this country to our people. And the more I learn about our history, the angrier I get. The more I look at this world and what has been done to people of African descent, the angrier I get. And the more determined I've become to use my skill as a weapon to fight racism and oppression. And so my admonition is that if you think that it's difficult to take your profession and use it as a weapon against racism, you're sadly mistaken. I know that the word is out in some circles that if you want to make it, you got to play the game. You got to stick your nose in certain places. You got to kiss certain portions of the anatomy. You got to get along. If you don't do that, you're not going to make it. You got to cool out. You got to smile. You know, you got to not be a problem. And I'm saying that you're crazy if you subscribe to that. In fact, when you grin at a system that is oppressing you, you tell the system, oppress on. Whip me harder, beat me, daddy, 8 to the bar. To be upset about what's happening to you is a sign of your mental health. To remain mute shows that there is something drastically wrong with you. And so it is my hope that you will begin to focus on the importance of history and knowing who you are so that you can do something about this condition. As I said, there's sickness in our community. There is sickness in this nation. And Lord knows there's a lot of sickness around the world. When you look at what's going on around the world, I'm sure that you must be upset. The very mention of the name, the United States of America, evokes a hissing around the world. You look at the headlines and you see that there are American politicians who are being kidnapped, American businessmen who are being shot, bombed, soldiers being sniped at. All around the world, America has a bad, bad name. And it isn't enough to just say that all of these people around the world are crazy. At least some of them must be upset about something and must have a good reason. History will tell you what they are upset about. You look at this country and you'll see that this country now is mineral poor. The American standard is very high, but it is not based on the material wealth of this nation because the material wealth of this nation has been depleted. And so the goods that we enjoy here in this country have been manufactured from raw materials that come from around the world. And the history of this country has been such that in order to get those raw materials from around the world at the lowest possible prices, American foreign policy has had a practice of installing Toms, Thomasinas, puppets, dictators to vamp on their own people so that they will sell raw materials to us dirt cheap. They talk about the Ayatollah Khomeini as being a madman. But they forget that before the Ayatollah there was a man named the Shah, who was a hired gun by Uncle Sam, who overthrew the legitimately elected premier of Iran, a man by the name of Mossadegh, a black man. And when Mossadegh came to power, he nationalized the oil fields in Iran and raised the prices of that oil. And all of a sudden he was overthrown, and a man named the Shah was put in power, and he brutalized his own people and dropped the prices of Iranian oil for Western consumption. And Uncle Sam called the Shah their man. He was invited to the White House. He was given the red carpet treatment, and he was protected by Uncle Sam. And finally, his own people, who he had been brutalizing, rose up and overthrew him and vamped on some of the Americans over there who had been protecting him. Then they said, oh, this is a shame. This is a shame. This is an outrage. And who was it who flew in a plane to rescue the Shah? Uncle Sam. And the Shah was brought to this country, and he was given the very best of medical care. They flew him to the Bahamas. They flew him to Mexico, living high on the hog at your and my expense. Small wonder why the people in Iran have some ugly things to say about Uncle Sam. And there was a man in Haiti by the name of Duvalier who vamped on his own people and murdered millions, not millions, but untold numbers as a facilitation process for Western interests. And when he died, he was succeeded by his son, who they call Baby Doc, who outdid his daddy in vamping on his own people. And when the Haitian people overthrew Baby Doc, who was it that flew in a rescue plane for Baby Doc at your and my expense and sent him over to southern France and gave him imported lobster and all that kind of stuff? It was Uncle Sam. There was a man in Cuba by the name of Batista who turned his own country into a toilet for the West. American business people went to Cuba to launder their money, and at the same time they could buy women freely. Sin spots abounded in Havana. And the man who facilitated that was Batista, who was paid well and armed well by the United States to facilitate United Fruit and all of those other interests that you saw in The Godfather. And when he was overthrown by a man named Fidel, Batista was rescued by Western interests, Uncle Sam. And they call Cuba now a dictatorship, and they call Fidel a dog. Interesting, I went to Cuba to interview Assata Shakur. I didn't see any Cuban people sleeping on the sidewalks. I didn't see any crime in Havana. I saw senior citizens 11, 12 o'clock at night walking through the park in downtown Havana, arm in arm, fearless, not worried about any crime. Everybody can read and write in Cuba. Medical care, dental care is free. So is daycare. The daycare facilities are immaculate. They open at 5 o'clock in the morning and they close at 7:30 at night. So a woman is not afraid to conceive a child, because that child will be accepted while she goes to work and be given meticulous care. Cuba is on the right side in Angola. Cuba's on the right side in Namibia. Cuba's on the right side in Grenada. Cuba's been on the right side all around the world, and Uncle Sam has been on the wrong side in Angola and in Grenada. They invaded Grenada. And then they say that Cuba is wrong. You got to know your history, my brothers and sisters. Otherwise, you might end up working in a place and aiding and abetting your employer to continue their blood-sucking processes instead of trying to check them up and tighten them out. There was a man in the Philippines by the name of Marcos. Same process. He was a facilitator for the West, financed by the West, and rescued by the West when he was overthrown. And this process has been repeated all around the world. It is for this reason that it is important that you understand that story, so that when you get where you're working, you can apply some pressure on your house of employment to correct their ways. And I'm not just talking through my hat, because I do it. And if I can do it where I'm working, believe you me, you can do it where you're going to end up working. But you have to be on fire, you have to be angry, and you have to be well informed. If you don't know nothing, then you're not going to do anything. And the more informed you become, the more of a threat you're going to be. And I tell you, one thing that this country is afraid of is a black man or a black woman with their eyes wide open. As long as they see you beating up on your sisters, they can relax and smile. As long as they see you vamping on your kith and kin, they can relax. As long as they see that you're dispersed and not united and at war and quarreling with each other, they can smile and be content because they know their position is secure. As long as you work for them and are a faithful, uncomplaining, non-agitating servant, they're delighted. The one thing they are afraid of is your sobriety and your information and your justifiable anger. And so, my brothers and sisters, I hope that you don't allow the environment to turn you into tapioca. I talk about tapioca. Tapioca is a substance that the doctor gives you when he doesn't want you to have anything that will upset your system. If you're sick, the doctor will prescribe tapioca, and you take that tapioca and it'll slide right on down through your digestive system and on out your you-know-what. And 5 minutes later, wouldn't even know you had anything to eat. Didn't agitate your system, no matter how sick your system may happen to be. And there are many now who are becoming tapioca in that they slide right through this system called the United States of America. No matter how sick it may be, they don't agitate or irritate anything. And after they're dead and gone, won't nobody even know you've been through here. There's a generation of young men and women who are being groomed to be tapioca. And I'm here to counsel you and urge you and quarrel with you and pick at you and jug at you to be the black men and women that you are supposed to be. Stand up and challenge injustice wherever you see it. Stand up and be men. If you call yourself a man, then show me by doing battle, not with a sister, not with your brother, but with the system that is oppressing your brother and sister. Then I'll call you a man. And I don't give sisters any dispensation on this. If you insist that you are a woman, then you are responsible too to stand up and not quarrel with your brother. Your real quarrel lies from without. A lot of the problems that exist from within have been created from without. And you're sadly mistaken if you think that you can solve the problem within by limiting the quarrel within. You've got to look at what created the problem that is in your house. And when you look outside of your house, you'll see this same sick system of which I speak that you want to work in. So you have to stave that off. You have to insist on your being African. Politically, intellectually, moral, it has to be part of your system. It has to be part of your bone marrow. It has to be as clear, as I say, as your hair is about being African. Because you know your hair remains adamant about being African. I got a little rhyme. No matter how thick the grease or how hot the comb, 4 days later goes right back home. And I got to tell you, don't you go looking around this auditorium. I'm not speaking in a particular sense or in a cosmetic sense. I'm speaking in an attitudinal sense. And you're sadly mistaken if you think you can relax because you haven't got anything in your hair. And so you've escaped my indictment. You missed the boat. There's some brothers and sisters who have their hair as ferociously African looking as they can, and on the inside of their head, bleached out. So my theme song is, what kind of education are you going to have? What kind of men are you going to be? What is your agenda really going to be? Are you only concerned about your individual selves, or are you concerned about the larger picture? Then I commend to your attention the fact that you're not realizing your full manhood unless you've got a commitment to make things better for the peoples of the world who look like you, who didn't eat dinner last night and are not going to eat dinner tonight, who have not slept under a roof, and who are angry as hell. What are you going to do about that condition? And if you think those people are going to stand by and watch a few people enjoy the fat of this world, you're sadly mistaken. They're going to foreclose on this country, and this country is going to change. It's changing already. As quietly as it's being kept, you know, this country is in serious economic shape. One of the biggest banks in this country, Manufacturers Hanover Trust, just sold half of its holdings to a Japanese bank who lost the war. And if you think that the Japanese have forgotten about the atomic bomb, you crazy. But they found another way to strike back. So that is my message to you this evening, in truncated terms, in elongated fashion. Not so much about the specifics of your academics, but the specifics of your maturity. I urge you to look beyond your individual lives and achievement to the broader picture. I admonish you to think in those old-fashioned terms of humility and love and charity and compassion. Those corny values. I admonish my brothers to be men in the truest sense of the word by being loving to our women. If you really want to prove your manhood, protect your woman. Give her love and tenderness. Woman won't think you a punk. If you protect your woman and you vamp on the people who threaten her, she will not think you're a punk. She'll love you for it. Am I right, sisters? Lights out. So, okay. I didn't want to be saying anything that upsets somebody, you know. So remember your manhood, my brothers and sisters. I tell you, you are the fruit of life. It is your strength. It is your guidance. It is your intelligence. It is your sensitivity that we men need so desperately. We cannot be men without you. We need you to honor us. We need you to protect us. We need you to comfort us. We need you to inspire us. And we need you to help us deal with our enemies. If we stand together shoulder to shoulder as equals, we can lick these people who are trying to make us their meal. We'll never do it alone. We'll never do it with any kind of chauvinistic attitudes. We need each other desperately. Sisters, you know that you have the responsibility, for the most part, in raising these children of ours. That's a heavy responsibility. And any brother who's actually seen a woman give birth, it's got to cool out any of your disdain. It's a powerful, moving experience. I never saw any of my children born, but I saw my grandbaby born. When my babies were born, when my children were born, you know, macho, you don't go in the delivery room, you know. You don't do that. You go out in the waiting room and smoke a cigar and pace up and down. But things have opened up now, and I was able to go into the delivery room, and my daughter was giving birth. And I helped her push the baby down. And I saw that baby born. And the doctor gave the baby to me. And I tell you, that is a beautiful experience. We are such a beautiful people. And the beauty of our continuity is something that'll just take your breath away. Finally, one more thing about us. These incidents that we are committing, these horrible incidents that we're committing, that the media so readily reports about. I think that the media is dead wrong in the way in which they report it because they miss a bigger picture. Mind you, I do not condone crime. Crime is abhorrent to me. But sometimes crimes are being committed by people who are in turn the victims of a crime, a bigger crime. Sometimes things are not what they seem to be. My father told me once about a farmer whose wife died giving birth to their only baby. And this farmer had a dilemma because he had to till his crops, and he was alone with this baby. And so he got a German shepherd to watch the baby in the crib. And every day he'd go out to till the fields, and he'd come back to check on his baby periodically, much to the concern of his neighbors, who said, "You got to be careful. You know what these German shepherds are like. They'll turn on you." And so one day he came in from the field, and he opened the door, and the German shepherd met him at the door, and the dog's muzzle, his mouth was covered with blood. And the man took out his gun and shot the dog dead. And he ran into the bedroom, and there was the baby alive in the crib. And at the foot of the crib was a dead wolf. Sometimes things are not what they seem to be. So the manner in which they are condemning us sometimes is not the way it really is. And sometimes these people find that their own kind end up at the short end of the stick. There's a man I know who's an artist by the name of Don Miller. And I'm sure some of his work is at this university, this college. And his thing has always been about blackness. African Maasai warriors, Stokely Carmichael, Malcolm, Martin, all the heroes and sheroes, that's all he paints, is African. And he's good. So I used to hang out in his studio because I used to think that I could do some artwork myself. And one day I was in that studio, and I looked in the corner, and there was a picture of a white boy, young man. I said, "Don, what has happened, man? Have you lost your commitment and your clarity? What is this white person doing in this sea of artistic blackness?" He said, "Oh, that's Tommy." And he told me that Tommy was resided in a community not too far from where he lives in New Jersey. And Tommy was kind of a straight-up young man. He was a straight-A student, finished a year in college. He was an athlete. He was on the basketball team, the only white on the starting five of the basketball team. You know what that is. He was very tight with all the brothers who were on the basketball team. And he could truly say that some of his best friends were black. But he had a very deep commitment to seeing to it that the condition that the black communities were in were something that he could participate in healing. And so every summer he would go and work in a program and live in a black community trying to help out with his black teammates. And this one particular summer had been a very successful summer, and everything had gone well, and one of his best friends on the basketball team had become engaged, and he threw a smoker for his best friend up in his parents' home, who had a big house up at the top of a mountain overlooking town. Kicked out the parents for the night, and they had a smoker. 12 o'clock, they got hungry, piled into some cars, and decided to go down into town to get something to eat. They were in about 3 or 4 cars. Tommy was in the last of the 4 cars. It was a convertible. He was sitting on the back of the back seat. And they weren't speeding, going down this hill. 2-lane road, 1 lane this way, 1 lane that way. No lights. Going down. Tommy was feeling so ecstatic. His best buddy was getting married. The program had gone well. He was getting ready to go back to school. He was just on the top of the world. Car he was in hit a bump. Tommy pitched back, struck his head, was knocked cold. First 3 cars didn't hear what happened. They continued on. His 4 buddies who were in the car with him, black, of course, knew what happened. They stopped immediately, jumped out the car, and went to Tommy to try to revive him. And they're trying to wake up, bring him back, and down the road comes a car. It's about 1 o'clock in the morning now, and this car is being driven by a solitary white man, alone. And he's driving, and the black young men, seeing the car coming, unable to revive Tommy or move him, ran out in front of Tommy to flag the car down. And this man sees these 4 blacks on the road, waving him down. He presses his foot down on the accelerator, went up on the embankment, went around the 4 black youths, came back on the road and crushed Tommy to death. Sometimes things ain't what they seem to be. And if you don't stop to check something out, you may end up penalizing the wrong person. And it may take one of your own. The funeral for Tommy took place in that black community where he worked. And just for a minute, black folks and white folks put down their weapons and wept as one. And they played his favorite song at the time, which was Aretha Franklin's Respect. And his teammates carried the casket to the cemetery. And black and white in that community fell behind that procession and followed the casket to the cemetery. Sometimes things are not what they seem to be. Sometimes things are not what they seem to be. Adelaide Sanford told me a story where she went to speak at a prison for incorrigible young men in their late teens, impossible to control, had committed all kinds of ugly crimes. She went up there and she started talking, and they were loud and cantankerous and whatnot, and she started telling them about their history. Very quietly, and it began to get quiet and quiet and quiet until you could hear a pin drop. And when she finished, the place just lit up, and they applauded her because she had told them how beautiful they are and how much she loved them. And then she had to leave, and she had to go down the steps and walk out through their midst to get out. And as she was walking down the center aisle, one young man stood up and stood in front of her. And so she put out her hand. And he said, "Sister, how about a hug?" And they embraced. And she said he wouldn't let her go. And he started crying. And he said, "I'd never heard anybody tell me about myself like that." And he said, "You don't know how long it's been since I had anybody hug me." And he wouldn't let her go. And when she finally pulled away from him and looked up, every brother in the place was online for a hug. And you tell me we are not a beautiful people? You tell me we are not a caring people? You going to tell me we're animals? You tell me that we don't have feelings? No, we have been the victim of people who don't have feelings. We are the victim of people who have no heart and compassion. Don't you ever let anybody make you think that you are not the essence and the quintessence of blackness, of Africanness, and humanity. You are a beautiful, magnificent people. And I know that there are whites in the audience, but I'm going to ask you to just sit and listen while a black man talks to his brother and sisters with love and compassion. Normally you expect a black man who's made it to speak in lofty terms about how he has made it. I want you to listen to a black man speaking to his brothers and sisters with love. And I do love you, and not in a romantic sense, but in a political sense. I love you in a political sense. I love you in an ethical sense. I love you in a moral sense, because I know how muscular you are and how magnificent you are. And there are forces at play to deny that. Brothers and sisters, drink deeply of the well springs that are available here at Medgar. The name means something. The game here is serious. The faculty is serious. You got a president who is serious. And you have a woman here in whose debt I will always be, Betty Shabazz. And I know many of you are going to say, well, yeah, that's Malcolm's widow. But that's only part of it. Betty has been a counselor to me. She has played the role that a sister should play with a brother. She's counseled me, she's corrected me, she's criticized me, she's informed me, she's guided me. And she's done that to thousands of brothers like myself who are misguided. And when we lose our way, she's played that role on her own 2 feet, notwithstanding the fact that she stood alongside Malcolm. She stood by us. You're lucky to have her in your midst. And you treat this woman with deep respect, just like you treat the faculty and the president with deep respect. You hear me? May God or Allah bless you, brothers and sisters, and keep you strong and clear and justifiably angry. May God make you informed and intelligent and give you a purpose. And I'll be looking for you out there in the trenches to deal with these people who are out to make the world its meal. I'll see you out there.
Thank you, Mr. Noble, for those kind words. Would I ask the audience, please, not to leave? We have some few announcements. And student members of the Student Government Association who work really hard to get Mr. Noble here, and with the help and support of Dr. Shabazz, and President Jackson. And we have an award that we'd like to present to him on behalf of the Student Body Association of Medgar Evers College. Before I go on with that presentation, I know he's going to sit and say, no, I don't want to, but I just have to because the Student Government Association have a mission here. As Dr. Edison or Jackson said, there's a new wind blowing, and we're sort of working hand in hand with that, which is what we're trying to do here to bring more forums and lectures to enhance the academic structure of the population here at Medgar Evers. So before I proceed with the announcement and awarding of the plaque to Mr. Gil Noble, please, even if it's just few words, again, we must have it. President Jackson, please. Please.
Thank you, President Mayers, and to our distinguished lecturer, Mr. Noble. We are indeed grateful and indebted to you for the fine words you brought to us this evening. As we've said here at Medgar Evers College, we are somebody. We are a beautiful people. And you've heard an outstanding black brother speak to you this evening to talk about how beautiful we are. And our motto at Medgar Evers College, knowledge is power. And you must act upon that knowledge in order for it to be power. There is a new wind blowing at Medgar Evers College. You are somebody. So I would hope that all of you who enrolled here at Medgar Evers College would take, if you have not already done so, a course in African history. Now, soon it will be required of you. Because when you have a sense of your history and who you are, then you can do great things for yourselves and for our people. And I just want to close by saying it is just wonderful. It is an honor for me to be the president of this great institution. So again, Mr. Noble, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Thank you, President Jackson. At this time, I'll call Ms. Carmen Martinez, or evening Vice President, to present Mr. Noble with plaque.
Mr. Noble, this time, as a member of student government, and a student of Medgar Evers, and as a great admirer of you, I do watch your show. It is a great pleasure for me tonight to present you with this award on behalf of Medgar Evers College, the Student Government Association. I would like to read it, if you don't mind.
Yes.
Okay, this award is presented to Gil Noble in recognition of your high ideals, unselfish devotion to your fellow man, and your civic and moral leadership. From the Student Government Association, 1989 through 1990, this day, October 25th, 1989. Thank you.
Just some few announcements. As you know, tomorrow there's another forum co-sponsored by the Student Government Association. It's a forum on Panama, United States intervention. Some of the speakers are Mimi Rosenberg, the distinguished attorney C. Vernon Mason, and many others will be here. There will be a film strip showing of the American troops, you know, invading the Isthmus of Panama, and there will be question and answer. That's again tomorrow at 6. Also, what is a CUNY-wide coalition? There's a press conference that's going to be held in front of the steps of City Hall, and that's on Friday at 11:30. And there will be 2 speakers, myself, the chair of the University Student Senate, and one of the leaders of the NYU Student Association. And what we're trying to have is at least 1,000 students from each of the 19 CUNY schools come out and support and speak about voting and the importance of this election. Just to make it clear for any of you students who will be out there, and I get up and I speak and I will say, okay, I cannot support. Let me just make this clear. The students from the private institution are able to come out and say, I support David Dinkins. I receive, with my organization and the student government, monies from the state and from the city. So as a student leader, I cannot come out and say, well, okay, you know, Medgar Evers Student Government Association, you know, we do in favor and all behalf would like to see David Dinkins or Giuliani. We have to be nonpartisan. So in my speech tomorrow, it will be just for the best candidate who's to serve humanity, to serve the people, to stop crime, do something about homelessness. So whoever that fits, and we hope to see you out there, as Brother Gil Noble just said about the polls. You know, the stunning change of, 45 to 41%, and we hope that maybe this will make some of us react different, and even some of us students to be out there on Friday at 11:30, and we do see, we're trying to get at least 1,000 students from each of the CUNY schools, and it's expected to be big and large, and you can have your banners and everything out there to just say, hey, we're out here, and the buttons that we're distributing to all the 19 campuses, as many of you have seen already, it says the students of the City of University of New York will elect the next mayor, 253,000 strong. That's the number of students in CUNY, and we surely can make a change in this mayoral vote. Thank you. Without any further ado, I'd like to thank you, the audience, for coming out. I'd like to thank the professors in the different divisions for excusing class that they could come to listen to the great Gil Noble speak. And again, a lot of times we have forums here, and it's tough to get the classes excused because we know, of course, academic is important. But again, I want to thank all the professors, faculty, and staff, the media services, Mama, who's sitting there, who really helped prepare a lot of the foods and the dishes for us. You saved us. And again, to the wonderful Dr. Betty Shabazz and the members of student government and student services. Dr. Carroll, also to you. You have an announcement? One brief announcement. No, students are never excused from the class. We're just hoping if your class, most classes are not held on Friday. Thanks, Dr. Shabazz. Thank you, sir.
Listen. Okay, I'll get it tomorrow. Okay. Okay, thank you. Yes, thank you.
He said what? Okay, no problem. Yeah.